Queen's Head. You know where I mean? If you live in town,
Yeah.
on the Six Ways Island, about 20 yards down the road on your left, there's a supermarket there now, I think.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Yeah. It was the Queen's Head, I think. That was a great gig. Really good gig. All these were locomotive gigs. See, I knew these people like Bob Thomas from locomotive days. I've been on the road for all the years, playing with their equipment, using their equipment. So just a matter of, calling up a favour.
Right.
Also, we got the lady gear, and they stayed with her for a few years.
So you must have been involved on a management level by that stage.
I think I helped them to start with and got the odd gig to start with. And one day, Ozzy came and said, "Will I be the manager?" And I think I said to him, I thought I already was. That was the sort of feeling I had, at least. Yeah.
I've got a note down about you talking to the parents about.
Oh yeah, I went to see all the parents with the contracts because they were fairly young. I'm sure you can work out how old they were, but they were fairly young. I was surprised if a couple of them were 18 or even under 18. And that sort of age, you need to get parents' signatures as well. And so I didn't want to just send the contracts around blindly. I wanted to meet them all.
Right. Do you know if they consulted, because these days obviously musicians' union and things provide legal services for those. For those.
I know I recommended them to talk to lawyers, but I don't think any of them did. But their parents were varying degrees were fairly serious about it. And I remember Geeze's parents; they were very thorough, and rightly so.
Yeah. That gives me a bit of an opportunity to talk a bit about the background of the band and the sort of their motivations for moving away from their background and sort of their path in life that was mapped out for them as labourers and so on. I mean, did you get any sense of that, their need to escape that? Because it's certainly something that comes across in the story of Black Sabbath.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? I think just like everybody else, if they could, anyone at any time in the world's existence could go on the road as a musician, it's a lot better than working in anything, whether you're a car clamper or a brain surgeon. It's better to go on the road as a musician. It's about as good as it gets, especially when you view it from the outside and never having done it. It looks really good then.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're on about now the stage where Earth are getting gigs and you're formally acting as their manager. I believe they recorded a demo at Zeller Studio.
Several.
The Rebel, Song for Jim, and Early One Morning Blues. Can you?
I can't remember the last one at all. I remember Song for Jim. I remember the Rebel.
Can you tell us about that recording session, how it came about, and what?
Not really. But in the progressing a band, there comes a time to record. It was very much musically in between times they did Song for Jim. I'd been playing them jazz things, not particularly because I wanted to get involved in jazz, but I wanted to understand the quality and the standard of musicianship that it was possible to attain, and also that's this. I keep going back to Kansas City jazz because it's probably the heart of the whole thing. If you listen to early Bill Ward, he hi-hat rides just like Kansas City Joe Jones does with the Basie band, and the Basie band, Kansas City band, is the great riff band in jazz, and who's the great riff band in rock? Ozzy also was quite taken with Jimmy Rushing, Ozzy had.
So were you saying? Listen to this.
Oh yeah, hour upon hour. I mean, one of the first things Ozzy ever recorded was a song called "Evening," without the G, which was a Jimmy Rushing song. That's an early one. Similar time, I would have thought, for Song for Jim. They did something else, Blue Suede Shoes at that time as well.
Yeah. Have you got? I'm going to ask it. Do you know if there's documentation existing of those?
Oh, so Jim, there are 2 emails of Andrew Dunbar. Do you want to take a look?
Could you print them for me? Bring them down, please.
I've got them. Yeah.
Thank you.
If it's not urgent, then.
Sorry, it could.
Maybe we'll do it now.
Do you know we're paying 5 times the price of paper when people print 5 pages when one do? Just got this. We may have a major just for the sponsor.
Right.
Well, a major sponsor. I've got to read to you. I can't put any names to it. It's hi. This is to guys representing us here. I'll make sure I get a figure from the organisers. But the previous deal was about 25k per year. I think this is the ballpark figure they're aiming for. Let me know if this is near what you guys have in mind. Does that sound like an almost yes? Be nice, wouldn't it? 2 years without major sponsor.
Yeah, we were just talking about sponsorship of festivals on the way down here.
Well, we've done really well for 23 years, always had major sponsors. The last 3 years we had Tesco, 3 years before that we had Starbucks, really good sponsors. And last 2 years with the credit crunch bit, we haven't. And It's been murder. We lost 18k one year, 21k the next year.
People are very interested in associating themselves with music cultures, though, aren't they? The band I manage, I'm looking to, I've recently had some success about placing them with, clothing manufacturers and things like that, and it's like, this is brilliant. I hope we get some more of this.
If you get the right person, it's essential. But to get the right person, get the ear of the right person. So where were we?
We were on you having because the reason I asked that is because I as I say, I manage a band, and there's sort of fine lines that exist in me just sort of highlighting stuff to them. And I'm never going to because they probably know more about it than I do, but I do sort of point things out to them and say, you guys should listen to this.
No, it depends. It's more that it depends of who you are and what the time is and what the band have got. They were a blues band playing blues rooting material. They knew they could no longer do that. They got to move on from there. And you're at this crossroads of you've got a bunch of guys who you're getting on well with, who are playing well, who've got a good audience rapport, and you want to go forward a bit. Where do you go? You go back to 1968 in your mind. I think what was around? There was nothing to cop. There was nothing ever preceded Sabbath that sounded like Sabbath. Whatever they got, whatever elements of influence they got, were taken out of a totally different context and brought into a new context. But at the time, until we got it right, we were panicking around for ideas and things. And because I knew about jazz and blues, my input was that. And there was a lot of what can we do? Which direction can we go? We need to get our own sound. There's all that. It seemed to go on forever. It didn't actually, probably just a few months, but it seemed like forever.
Well, we know that there was an incident that probably influenced the sound, which Alex was going to ask about.
That's the Tony's accident.
Before my time. It was never played up in my time at all. Something we all accepted. It's one arm was shorter than the other. I've no idea. I've been asked about it 100 times. I've no idea. It was no big thing to us. We didn't think about it a lot. He never complained about it.
But isn't that why he was detuning and using heavier gauge strings and so on?
Why using heavier strings? That's absolutely true. But I think people probably over-examined that.
Really?
I think so. I think that people have.
Because isn't that? I mean, I think that there's something about that chord. Sort of, I'd love to speak to a musicologist about it because it just does. When it's played really loud, it does resonate. It does something to me, and I'm sure that that's one of the reasons why that mode of music has become so popular. And I'm very interested in the transition from a working blues band towards what Black Sabbath became.
Well, I can't really help on that. I've talked this before with people. I think they're just a bunch of guys who have learned to play quickly, trying to improve, and they just came up with something that's almost. I mean, how we actually got the actual style together. It's still a bit of a miracle. I mean, I know the moment it did. I saw Geezer popped his face around my dining room door and said, I've got it, in his impish fashion. And we thought, okay, what is it this time, Geez? And he played the songs that he'd done, and we thought, poof, this is it, this is where we're going. They were straight off to rehearse and came back, and when I went to rehearsal with them, that place over by the blues ground we used to go to, and it was just so obvious after that.
Right.
It was clear light, clear direction.
I thought they were practicing a lot in Aston.
I never saw them practicing in Aston.
Where were they rehearsing?
I can't remember the road. If you came on the inner ring road, across that island below the blues ground with McDonald's on the right, up there a little bit, there's about the first not little off roads, but the first major junction left was a pub on the corner there. That was it.
Right. So
I've-
not,
I've-
not,
I've-
not, a, not a rehearsal studio.
So upstairs we have a pub.
I don't suppose it
Well,
were
we're
rehearsal.
rehearsal studio.
Yeah. Well, that's, you know.
No, it's upstairs we have a pub.
Yeah.
So-
Okay. I wanted to talk about the deal that you did with Vertigo and how the recording of the album is fairly well documented, I think.
Wrongly, but yes.
Oh really? Is there anything
Well,
that you'd like to put straight on that?
I read the Stevens this Sabbath. I bought it on Saturday, and it's quite wrong.
Is that the recent Gate Deluxe 2-disc package?
No, it's one disc. Because go photograph a Big Bear Folly in with about 20 of us.
Okay, no, I haven't got
Yeah.
that one.
Okay. Very simply, I got some nice record outlets. I'm still glowing from the Locomotive hit, as far as EMI are concerned. I've taken them Bakerloo, who they thought were pretty good, and they've done their album with Bakerloo. I took Tea and Symphony, another Birmingham band, who they thought were wonderful. They really loved Tea and Symphony. Tony Hall particularly thought Tea and Symphony were the best thing ever. We didn't like Black Sabbath. And David Platts, who...
This is EMI?
No, this is Tony Hall Enterprises.
Right.
We did production deals with THE, and he placed them with EMI at that stage, anyway. And he didn't want Sabbath. He just didn't get Sabbath. The man who got the money behind THE was called David Platts, who used to run Essex Music. And I got on very well with David, and I went to see him. I said, listen, Tony doesn't get Sabbath, but I know they're going to be hot. He said, I've heard them, Tony's played them. He said, I don't see it. I said, David, they're going to be hot. I promise you, they're going to be hot. And he said, well, let's see, and he fobbed me off. But so I went into Zeller, and we made a facsimile of the Black Sabbath album in Zeller.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I took that around. People said I took something else around, like the Rebel and things. The Rebel came in much later.
So the session at Trident wasn't the first time. The story of the first album is that they, the story which is published is that they stopped off on the way to Denmark or Europe and recorded the songs for the first time in a 12-hour session. But
what happened was I took the recording we'd done in Zeller. I took them around 14 different record companies. There were 14 different record companies in those days, and I got 14 straight no's. So I went back to Platts. I played to him. And I said, what am I going to do? I know the band's hot. He said, do you want to master it? Do you want to record it properly? I said, yeah, of course I do. He said, I'll give you £500 to do it as an advance. An advance not on Sabbath, but an advance on my Bakerloo earnings, because he didn't think Sabbath was worth anything. He had a company called Tuesday Productions, and which was headed by Gus Dudgeon. Tony Hall had come with a few songs for them to do. This Evil Woman was one of them. No, that was later. The Rebel would have been one of them, I think, and there was something else. Two or three things that he came up with. They're all off, are they? Okay.
How long have you got? Are you happy to
it's okay, yeah. I'm going to need a cup of coffee soon. And you probably will as well. I'm trying to anyway, he put the money up, and Gus Dudgeon didn't fancy it, but the band apparently say that they didn't like Gus Dudgeon. So they put in a young producer that they got for Tuesday Productions, who'd never produced anything before, a guy called Roger Bain. And we didn't go into Trident, we went into Regent Sound Studios just off Tottenham Court Road. I can't name the streets on it. I think one of his sides is actually on Tottenham Court Road, but it's a little side road there. And those early photographs you see of the band sitting around a small studio with one of them had a black eye. That was all. That wasn't Trident. It was Regent Sound, and that's where we mastered the album. And with the finished master of what was to become the big selling Black Sabbath album, I went around the same 14 record companies again. And I got another 14 straight no's of the actual record that was the multi-million seller. Came back to Birmingham, and I was in two minds as to say, okay, let's just forget the buggers and put it on Big Bear and we'll just do it ourselves and show that we're right. And I got a phone call from Olaf Wiper. Now, Olaf Wiper had worked for CBS Records on Theobald Road, and he had heard, I'd been seeing, he was one of 14 who turned me down. He said, Jim, I've just been headhunted over to Philips Records, and this might be a problem now. If nobody had to answer the phone, I might have to. I hear voices, can't they? Let's pick the phone up. He'd just been headhunted from CBS to Philips to set up their underground label, because everyone had to have an underground label. EMI were maybe the first with Harvest. Pi had Dawn. Someone had someone else, and Philips had Vertigo. And he said, that record you played me some weeks ago, when it was, he said, I think we can do a deal on this. Just what I wanted to hear. I said, Olaf, that's fantastic. I remember the conversation clearly, like it was yesterday. I said, I'll be on the first train tomorrow, and we could sort it out. No, don't bother. We'll do the deal. I said, Olaf, you didn't listen to it. You only heard the beginning of the first track and the beginning of the second track, and you said you weren't interested. Yeah, but I'm thinking about it. I said, oh, you didn't hear it. He said, I've got £500 for money. I'll give you whatever royalty it was, and I'll get you released within 3 months. What do you think? I thought, £500? That pays back Dave Platt's £500. Fantastic. So I said, yeah. So he sent the contracts. I later found out his first tranche of releases, VO1, VO2, VO3, were something, I can't quite remember, something like this. VO1 was Manfred Mann's Chapter 3. VO2 was Rod Stewart's Old Raincoat, Whatever You Let You Down. VO3, I think, might have been Heisman's Coliseum. That's his first, he released in threes, his first week. His second tranche were Mayday, VO4, some Ponzi band from London, who they were, VO5, and his album he got scheduled for VO6. They hadn't got the master delivered on time. So he got a catalogue number and no record of what he wanted. All he wanted from me was a filler. Rather than destroy his schedule, he told the world he's going to release these in threes. Rather than destroy his schedule, he'd pick up any old rubbish that he thought, oh, Jim's a decent bloke and the record didn't sound too bad, it'll fill. And I promise you, that was it. He actually did one very good thing for us. He involved a guy called Keith, somebody who was the name of Keith as a designer, and they came up with the inverted cross, and they came up with, we had approval of it, we could have said no, but it was their creativity, not ours.
Yeah, and that's another thing I had down to ask is where, how did the band feel about that?
Well, they loved it. We all loved it. We thought, cracking, this really, we thought the upside down cross was a bit of a risque giggle, but we thought the colour for it was great. It was a fabulous colour.
So did you know that was happening before it happened, or
no? Olaf said, "Let me try. I've got a photographer." We weren't that bothered about the design. We just want to get the record out. We knew the music was great, and if we come up to something only 60% good, we'd probably have said yes. But it was great, and we wouldn't got this is great.
Yeah.
The other thing I didn't like was they didn't give Big Bear a credit on it, which they did on the second pressing.
Right.
So if you get into the pressing with managed by Jim Simpson, Big Bear Records, with our old logo on, which Walt Disney later sued us over, by the way. It's a very rare pressing. It's only the second pressing. But
sorry, hang on a minute. I'm very interested in collecting records. They're saying that the first pressing didn't have the logo, the second pressing did, and then it reverted to the.
It stayed with on until I lost the band.
Right. Okay.
But the week of release, there were two charts in those days. Music Week, which wasn't called Music Week, it was called Record Retailer then, and another magazine called Music Business Weekly. There were two trade papers, both good, both really on the ball, and we went straight in the chart on the Music Business Weekly one, and straight top 20 the week of release. We did 5,500 records. I know it's not a lot, but from an unknown band to 5,500 records the week of release, and I would have said, "Brilliant, Jim. Well done. How have you done it?" I said, "That's what I told you, Olaf. I said, we've got a following. The band had been on the road for how it was. We're playing so many gigs a week. The band are hot. They got fans. The fans have gone out and bought the record." No, he said, no, have you done it? And he was convinced I'd bought it on the chart.
Right.
Nothing. Even now, he'd probably say, Jim was very canny. He bought that on the chart.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to. If I didn't know how to, I didn't have the money to. And even to this day, Olaf convinced we bought that on.
Yeah. Going back a bit, the gigs that you know, they were playing a lot, as we can see from the gig list. But what about Hamburg? I mean, did you go out with them to Hamburg?
No,
and do you think that was like a pivotal moment?
No, it absolutely definitely was the moment they got good. I was booking lots of bands out to Hamburg. I used to book stuff in there regularly, you know, the other bands I handled as well. And Sabbath benefited a lot from being sort of the junior band in the Big Bear stable, because other bands were opening doors which they just had to walk through. You know, Bakerloo went out somewhere and did well. It's easy for them to say, well, why don't you try Black Sabbath? They're, you know,
from a trusted source.
Well, I mean, we all like that. You know, if you go and buy a sandwich you like, you'll go back to the shop again and buy another one. It's human nature. And so, putting the Hamburg did them without any question. They came back battered and bleeding, but they were hot. They were really what Basie used to call a one-beat band. You know, where someone hits a beat, everybody hits the beat. Intuitively. They didn't have to look around to see if the harmonica player was going to come in the right chorus. They just knew it, because they were doing 6:45s a night.
Yeah.
And at weekends they're doing 8:45s. 8:45s. 8 hours, 45 on, 15 off. And Ozzy's voice had gone, Tony's fingers were raw. But to come back and do 2 times 1 hour after that, it's a breeze.
Yeah. Going back to gigs then, would you care to have a look through the ones which I've highlighted? And if there's any, I've only highlighted really the Birmingham ones, but if there's any particular stories associated with those gigs, I don't want you to have to think too hard about it, but because if you remember
that one
right.
is a subject of the photograph that's in this Sabbath album I've got upstairs.
So that's 30th of June 1969, Opposite Lock. Can you tell us a little bit, because we've got a photo of that gig.
Yeah.
So no, you're saying that there is a photo of that gig on a reissue.
There's also another one I saw in Ozzy's book with Ozzy naked. Have you seen that?
Alex?
I will have done, yeah. I've just read Ozzy's book. But
Maybe it's not Ozzy's book, maybe it's another book. I think it's Ozzy's book.
So the photo of Ozzy.
I've not read it, so I don't know about it. I'm pretty sure somebody told me the picture of him and a girl on stage, both with hats or something covering their sensitive parts, and he.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
You remember that one, do you?
I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that was the rehearsal for that gig.
Okay.
God knows how it came about.
The Opposite Lock gig.
Yeah.
Okay. And just looking through those others, is there any there that particularly stick out in your mind?
We used to do a load of stuff in Denmark. Still do.
I'm kind of more interested in the Birmingham ones, really.
Birmingham. Caves Club.
See, the Birmingham ones are the ones we're more likely to find.
Black Sabbath. I remember we used to play in Walsall. It wasn't that. It was the Co-op. As you come down, is it Ablewell Street? Is it as you come into Walsall from Birmingham Road, before you're forced to turn left at the bottom? There's a Co-op on the right. We used to play a hall there. There were about 600 people. I remember that. I mean, last year, Big Bear arranged 640, 650 gigs. And it's been like that for 40 years. It's a bit hard to...
Yes, yeah. That's why I brought it along, to give you a prompt, really, rather than... It's a lot easier with that, rather than me just saying...
I remember the Canning Hill Park one, yeah.
Okay, I think a lot of people remember that one.
Yeah, it was a good gig.
Yeah, can you talk about that one on
the day was hot. TNC played great. Locomotive had just had a new bass player in, called Frankie somebody, and didn't really get it together. And I think it's a hot September afternoon, and I think T and Simply stole the show that day. Sabbath would have opened as a junior band of the three. I might have some sleeves upstairs of the other bands that we're talking about here. Is this a continuation?
Yes.
Birmingham Arts Lab is utterly wrong.
Okay.
Birmingham Arts Lab was on Summer Row.
Yeah.
It's a sort of community centre place, and nothing to do with Zell Studios, whatever.
Right.
Zell Studios is the old Ladbrokes piano workshop. It was a workshop. Then when Zeppelin went out of business, no, they didn't go out of business. They did, but they moved from there up to Ampton, without an H, Ampton Road in Edgbaston, before they went out of business. But when they vacated Zeller, that's when Ladbrokes pulled back the back room again. It's only a small room, probably about 4 times as big as this room. That's all.
Yeah. So, is there any sort of stories associated with that recording session?
Yeah, Regent Sound.
Yeah.
I recorded 2 days. That's more like it. And Hamburg or Denmark? Nope.
Yeah, it's not on there. That's interesting. Yeah, I've not thought of it.
That's exactly in Regent Sound's what I just told you they recorded.
Yeah.
And I know I'm right. It's not something I'm doubtful about. I scouted the studio. I found the studio. I booked it on because of the rate. I knew we could afford it. I knew we could bring the record home within. I got £500. I couldn't spend £600. I spent £500. So I shopped carefully. It's different where it was. It was typically 2 days recording. There's another 2 days mixing.
2 days recording and 2 days mixing.
Yeah.
Right.
And they didn't apparently go to Denmark the next day, which is something I remember it that way. It didn't take long to do. I guess things worked. Oh, good heavens! That wasn't. These bands would have played regularly at Henry's Blues House. Duster Bennett I mentioned earlier on.
Yeah.
Not on the same night. Never.
Right.
Never.
So we've got another one at Mother's there. This was 6th of February 1970 with John Peel
as
the support act. The John Peel Roadshow.
Yeah. I'm sure you viewed yourself as support, but there you go. That's not right. It's not right. It's. I can't remember. It's ringing bells somewhere. Holy Child School. There you go. Okay. Now that could easily be the support act for them, of course. Cancelled, was this? Don't wonder why.
Did you take photos of Sabbath live?
No, matter of options I'll take. You're there to do a job, and you don't think about posterity. Well, I was there to do a job, and I didn't think of posterity.
What about off stage?
No, I didn't really. There's a bit of a. I'm working pretty hard in those. Not we're not working hard these days. We are, but I managed 5 bands. They're all working all over Europe.
Yeah.
I was probably averaging, I don't know, 60 flights a year, 70 flights a year. I like to go because we had a distribution in every European country. I like to meet my distributors. So if the band were playing in Paris, I'd go to Paris. But when the band would lie in bed the next day, I'd be in the record company office doing this.
Now we've got a town hall gig there. I've interviewed somebody about that who's just said it was just so loud that they had to leave after 5 numbers. I wonder if you have any memories of that.
No,
did they pay you on that occasion?
I never lasted as long as 5 numbers.
Sorry,
I never lasted as long as 5 numbers.
So you
were no, they were loud. It got to a point where it was beyond the comfort line. When did I lose them?
I believe. Well, this person who's put this together was given a date as 4th of September 1970. Does that sound about right?
I know it was just Saturday morning. No, it's not right. At least, if it is right, then this is wrong. Because on the Friday night, Jeff Lucas, the roadie, came around and said, "Oh, the boys have got no money," which is hard to believe because they were keeping all the money at that time from the gigs, and I was just getting. When they left me, they owed me quite a lot of commission. Because all the money was coming in, so we didn't care who had it, but they got no money. We need £200 to get tomorrow night's gig, otherwise we can't do the gig. And that night's gig was in Liverpool. And that was the Friday night. Saturday morning, I got a letter saying that my services were no longer required. So I know But they're in Liverpool the next night. And I don't see Liverpool anywhere in here on
No,
this date sheet.
no. That's interesting.
Well, maybe it's just Liverpool's missed out. Could they play Liverpool? Yes, they could, of course.
Yeah.
Now that Paranoid tour was a tour that I booked. You see, there's the band. That's one of my bands, Dog the Big People. So I put them on the marquee, apparently, with Dog the Big People, who then were a junior band, because that was half a locomotive. So they've gone back to the bottom of the pile again. I don't recognise a lot of these dates, and a lot of dates I do remember are not there.
Earlier we were talking about the musical influences that the band were exposed to, and you maybe have sort of pointed them towards.
Excuse me a second, this is absolutely wrong. Paranoid single released on the 17th of July. The week I lost them, their second single, which was Paranoid, was number 1 on the album chart. Sorry, number 2 on the album chart. Sorry, Paranoid's single was number 2 on the single chart. Paranoid album was number 1 on the album chart, and Black Sabbath had come back in the top 20 at number 16 on the album chart. That's the week I released them. The week they fired me, right?
Yeah.
And I'd set up the American tour, and it was not near to taking place. I mean, it wasn't that week or next week. I hadn't booked my flight, for instance. I hadn't booked anyone's flight, but the tour was set up. So here it's got them playing in San Francisco on July the 16th. And the time they played before Paranoid was released.
Right.
That was the tour I set up. And
Which was postponed.
they postponed it because they thought they could get better money.
Oh right, okay.
The new Manchester postponed it, yeah. But you probably don't know the gigs, but Fillmore East and Fillmore West were, and Whiskey A Go Go in LA. They were the great venues.
Oh yeah, the legendary venues. Well, that's another example, Jim. You know, I'd like in a couple of years' time, I'd like people to be saying, yeah, you know, do you know the story of Henry's Blues House and stuff? In the same way that people talk about the Fillmore East and you know, the Whiskey A Go Go and things like that.
When I said it was absolute nonsense, I hadn't read further to see the word postponed.
Okay.
But it is nonsense because the tour wasn't cancelled until they got rid of me. So he's got to get rid of me in September 70, and the tour cancelled in July 70.
Right.
So that's cockeyed. Right, so much news on these dates.
What about the 10th National Blues Festival at Plumpton? Was that sort of, because obviously playing the big festivals is different.
We played all the big festivals that summer. Also, we played opposite Mungo Jerry. Mungo Jerry just had a really big singles hit, and we got a big albums hit. Yeah. And we to about every festival, and they were there. It was nice. So she was probably nice night.
Yeah, she was. I'm just. Yeah, we've already covered that.
That's summer festivals. I mean, it's just a blur. Those festivals every week.
Yeah. I've kind of gone through a lot of this stuff, which is good. So I'm just looking at another sheet of notes here. I noted down the bands which the various members of Sabbath were in before they became Polka Tot Blues. So I've got the names Rare Breed, Mythology, the Rockin' Chevrolets, The Rest, The Approach. I don't know if you have any.
I'm more familiar with them now than I was then because I read about them.
Yeah.
And Mythology, of course, we knew. It's a funny thing, you know. You tend to look. You get involved with the band. You tend to look forward. You don't. Sort of, I suppose if you form a band of superstars, you look back. But you know, the band. You can't imagine how many bands were around in those days.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, even that wasn't the peak of Brumby. The peak of Brumby was in the 60s. 62 to 66, 67, I guess. That Crown in Hill Street, when I went there, they got no live gigs on at all. 3 years earlier, they'd have had 5 or 6 or 7 a week, every week. And Golden Eagle would have had the same, on the same street. You go to any high street in any suburb, you go to the railway, as it was called, I think, in Selly Oak, they'd be at least 5, 6 shows a week. There were 200 or 300 venues in the area of Birmingham, each putting on an average of 5 or 6 or 7 shows a week. There are so many great bands around. I mean, a good band could work you'd work 9 times a week locally. You want to do 2 shows on a Friday, 2 shows on a Saturday, work every other day. If you don't, your manager's not doing his job right, if you're any good. And a good band would become brilliant. An exceptional band would become stratospheric. There's nothing if a band has good players who work on their music, there's nothing better for them than to gig.
Yeah.
And to do long gigs, play too long, get tired, falling. It's like a footballer. If you're non-league football and you're working in an office in the week, you're not going to be as good as a guy who gets up on 8 o'clock on Monday morning and starts training till 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
There's no way.
That's interesting, because the band that I manage, we don't go for basically because they're all sort of, 2 of them are older than me, 2 of them are slightly younger than me, but they've done their playing lots and lots and lots when they were 19, when they were 15 years younger. So now we kind of leave it as we play the special gigs and make them special, kind of thing, because they don't need the practice of playing.
Obviously not a career band then.
No, certainly not. They used to be in career bands.
You know, I had at the time I had 4 or 5 bands and all of them were career bands, and they were all pro.
Right.
We made enough money for each of them to be able to give their daytime jobs.
Do you remember conversations with Sabbath about the possibility of becoming pro, or?
Oh yeah. I mean, Ozzy didn't work very much. But remember, because of the position I was in, working with other bands anyway, they very quickly had enough gigs to go pro. Listen, if you do Carlisle on a Tuesday night, how are you going to do a job the next day? There's always that interim period anyway where you're not really making enough to go pro, but you can't do your daytime job because you've got to go out and do the gigs. There's always that in between.
Yeah.
Thing.
I've just noticed something else in my notes here about the first Led Zeppelin album. Obviously that came out before the first Sabbath album. Can you talk about that period leading up to the release?
We're very aware of Led Zeppelin, particularly me, because they got my drummer, John Bonham. And we pitched our advertising right in their face. We billed them as Black Sabbath makes Led Zeppelin sound like a kindergarten house band.
Have you got... You know what I'm going to ask?
I expect so. I expect so somewhere. Press releases that say that, yeah. But that was that. Used that slogan for a long time.
Can you just say it again?
Black Sabbath, make Led Zeppelin sound like a kindergarten house band. Because the thing you wanted to be there, the thing you really wanted to be was heavy. You know, the ambition was to be heavier than anybody else. And you say about, oh, great band, they're really heavy. You know, it's a quality you look for. A bit indefinable, really, like someone asking you to define rhythm. You know, because that's what rhythm is. You ain't got it. You either got it or you haven't, and you either got heaviness or I think it meant serious in a way. You know, of value.
So that first Zeppelin album, do you remember the first time you heard it? Or?
Yeah, I'm not impressed. Wasn't impressed. Never was. I should never say because I know Robert, but I think Bonham would have stayed better if he'd stayed in Locomotive, and Locomotive would have been better with him in it.
Right. Yes. See, my sort of relationship with metal, when I was sort of 13, 14, getting into music, I was more into what you call sort of alternative music, indie pop kind of thing, Joy Division, Echo and the Bunnymen, that sort of music. And I would argue endlessly with my friends about the merits of guitar solos and being really loud and stuff like this. But now I do appreciate it much more.
Yeah.
So I think, but of those bands, I do think Sabbath they're the easiest, the ones which I've got the most into as a result of doing this project.
I think like it or not like them, they're really important and they're really, really, really original. No, it's just almost as if it landed from outer space. You can't actually. Most bands, Zeppelin, you can see what led into it. Look at Jimmy Page's earlier bands. Well, naturally, it was Jimmy Page, so it had a continuation, but nothing preceded Sabbath.
Right.
I can honestly say I've heard nothing preceded Sabbath. They sort of invented that genre.
Yeah. And they did it at Henry's Blues House. I wondered if you...
They did it themselves, you know, with outside influence. I suppose I was the strongest outside influence, but they did it themselves. Once they got the direction,
Yeah.
I sort of let go of the creative side because they really got it. All I did was mark them out of 10, as it were, for what they were doing. You know, approve or disapprove or change that. But it was them. Once the germ was there, once the direction was established, it was them.
Can you remember the point at which they outgrew Henry's Blues House?
I would say about the second time they played Mothers, because I couldn't have them played at 400 or 500 capacity and at a 180 capacity. It didn't make sense. I suppose I was by the time I was touring with Sabbath, you know, going off the European days particularly, I guess I was letting go of Henry's a bit. I had a guy who worked for me. I used to get him to run the door for me, but
Can you remember his name?
Norman Hood, yeah.
Is he still around at all?
I don't know. Yeah. If it's a goblin, I don't. Yeah, he claims to have found Sabbath and developed them.
Really?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of research recently, and that hasn't come up.
No, he was after Sabbath. I once booked them into a venue that he worked with. I don't think he ran it as a blues band, and I think he sort of likes to claim ownership of them.
I've been reading about the Beatles industry in Liverpool, and you know, the fifth Beatle, you know, that kind of bloke claiming to be.
Epstein.
No. I mean the guy in the pub who you will meet if you're obviously a tourist.
Yeah, but there are several fifth Beatles, aren't there? Was it Pete
Best?
Pete Best, yeah.
Stuart Sutcliffe. And
that's right.
so
on. And they're both.
Was there a roadie a particular roadie? Or
no, we had several. I mean, I read a book by two of their roadies once. It's pure fairy tale. But the roadies never played. One of the roadies was taken down to London with them when they were seduced to go to Wilfred Pine and Patrick Meehan, their subsequent managers, and they were very impressed because Pine and Meehan had him measured up for a chauffeur's suit for them.
Right. Was that something at what point were you aware that might happen?
Oh, much earlier than that.
Yeah.
I made a conscious decision not to be their doorkeeper, not to be a policeman. It was quite common in those days for people to try and steal bands. Don Arden was a you know, Don Arden's actually the father of Don Arden was the master of that, and Pine and Meehan both worked for him, and they came on his behalf on two separate occasions to steal the band and failed. Charlie Wayne, who was involved with Don Arden, somehow would that have been? Wasn't the Move? Would it be the Move? Did Don might have had the Move at one time. I don't know, but anyway, Charlie Wayne, as we know him, came down on Don's behalf to seduce them, and they turned him down. And then Pine and Meehan quit from him. So at least those two overtures had been made to them, which I knew about. I knew other people sitting around, and you go to a gig, and you'd find someone just can I just come see the band? Well, who are you? And you just realise that he's a dodgy agent, and I just got fed up with that. I look at spend my, and also I think other herbal substances were creeping into them, and I was never very good at things like that. And while they're with me, they're very straight.
Yeah, there's a sort of a sense in some of the writing about them that they were quite a tough, close group of lads that you wouldn't want to mess with. Is that the case?
You'd mess with Billy, you'd mess with Geezer at the same time. I don't think Tony would have put much of a fight. I think Ozzy would have clung onto your throat until he was dead. But I don't think they're too hard.
Right. Okay. That's one of the things. You know.
Owen was a big bloke, but I don't. He never struck me as being particularly hard.
Four guys in a van spending a lot of time in a van together. There's funny incidents and in jokes and things that happen. I find with the band that I work with, they like me. I sometimes think my function here is to be the straight one, not the butt of the jokes, but so they can all go off over here and have their own in joke. They need an outsider to make that work. and I sometimes fulfil that role of being an outsider. I don't. What was the atmosphere like in the Sabbath van?
Ozzy was put upon a bit by the others, particularly Tony. You know, because he didn't play anything. They tried to make him feel that he was somehow inferior or inadequate.